Yes, you do?
I'll need it next week.
All right. We're back. It's COMP125, and it's in the summer 2018 semester, and it's week 9, part 1 of our broadcast. Not a lot of attendance today. Who knows why? We talked about OOP with JavaScript last week, and we're going to continue some of that this week. I don't want to leave it. I don't want to let it go. And why? Because OOP is such an important part of kind of JavaScript, the JavaScript ecosystem, and the way we use classes. We made some classes and objects last week, and we're going to kind of use them this week as much as we can, right? Some of them are going to be built-in classes. Some of them are going to be libraries we download and we try and use with a firm understanding of how methods and objects work now. We should have more of an understanding. I was going to give you guys assignment 3 this week, but I think I'm going to hold off until next week. And the reason why is because there's some stuff I want to cover with Ajax, which I'm probably going to do next week, I think, just because the way the things are working. And I don't want to give you an assignment that you probably won't have all the information to do. So that's going to be next week. So next week we'll give you assignment 3. Hopefully by then everything else will be marked. And then the following week is going to be, we're going to start getting into more advanced stuff. I'm also going to probably include a little section in the week 13 around server-side JavaScript. I might talk a little bit about that. So we'll do a little bit of Node and Express, right? I know some of you have been asking about it, so we'll probably do that around week 13. Again, this week is week 9, so we get a few weeks before we get to that point. Any questions around object-oriented programming with JavaScript, the stuff we covered last week? Because last week was kind of a pivotal week. It's important to understand stuff. We've also covered, just up to date, just to mention, we've covered modules and the whole idea of namespaces with ifs. So if I was going to bring up last week's, actually what we'll do is we'll make a new lesson because we had lesson 8 last week. We'll do lesson 9. I'm just going to copy this one here and paste it. Again, we'll have a little exercise tomorrow as normal, right? So like we do every week. Some people aren't doing the exercises, and that's fine. But I still think it's great from a practice perspective if you guys are involved in doing the exercise. All right, so I've kind of made lesson 9, and I'm going to get rid of the .git folder like we normally do. So there it is. .git is gone. Git gone. There we go. And I'm going to kick off Visual Studio Code here and drag and drop this in. All right, there we go. And then just like normal, I'm going to try and initialize everything. So this time I'm just going to do it with the editor. So I'm going to go into my GitHub part in source control. And just like it says here, it allows me to initialize my repository the way I like, right? So it says initialize repository. So notice that there's 347 files right now that need to be updated because I'm updating all of them. I don't have anything in the gitignore file. Gitignore is usually used to ignore stuff to put up on GitHub, like we mentioned before. I'm just going to call this initial commit, like we normally do. I'm just going to do everything with the editor as much as I can. I'm going to click this checkbox here, right, which allows me, oh, let's do this first. Sorry. So that was git init. This is git add dot when I click this little button. That's git add dot equivalent, right? And then here's my initial commit. When I click this check mark, that's git commit -m. And whatever the message is, initial commit. Now, one thing I can't do is I can't push because I don't have a remote, right? So your repository has no remotes to configure. If you see this little configuration button, right? If I want to be able to configure a remote, that's the one thing that I can't do in here. There's nothing that allows me to configure a remote. So that's the only time that I'll have to go into my command line, right? So I'm going to press Control and backtick, which brings up my command line, integrated command line inside my Visual Studio Code, right? And I want to figure out this commit, right, or this remote. So I'm going to go up on GitHub, and we're going to make a new repository. So here's COMP125, summer 2018, and then it's lesson 9, right? That's what we're doing. And then I've got the remote. There it is. So copy these 2 lines like normal, go back down here and paste. And that's it for the remote. We've connected. Okay. So everything we've done so far is as normal. Let's review what we had last week, because I think we've been away for a week. We did like 2 weeks ago, and then we're kind of back now. So let's do a little bit of review. So if you look at our structure now, we have assets, right? And we have no images yet, right? And we also have some content. We only have one app.css file. We have some node modules where we have our libraries, Bootstrap, and so on that we have in there. In our scripts, we have one core file called app.js and another objects folder, which is also kind of a way of delineating or separating our files into different modules. So even though we've talked about the module pattern, and the module pattern is like this, right? If I look at the person.js file as an example, we've seen the module pattern over and over again, where we have this iffy, the syntax for the iffy, and then the closing part down here. That's the module pattern, right? Where we kind of create a module called objects, we pass it in, and then when I want to add to the module, I use objects.person or whatever the identifier we want to assign to some class or object or whatever we want. That's the module pattern. Okay, so that's what we've done. We've also extended the module pattern, and there's two ways of doing that. One, we did it this way, right? So this is the first way of doing it. And then the other way we did it like this, where we actually used ES6 syntax. So this is the old syntax, right? Or the older syntax, where we say let person is equal to function, and then person. And then what we do is we do a person.prototype says hello, which is we add, this is the method, right, for the class. And then we tried this new way of doing things, which is a little clearer, in my opinion, right? Please keep in mind, just as a reminder, that even though it looks nice on the back end, it's doing the exact same thing, right? It's still doing prototypes, still doing the same prototype chain and all that kind of stuff. But the really cool thing is that you can use the extends keyword and all this stuff, and it's supported in most browsers. All right, so that's what we talked about last time we were together. I did fix the problem. We had a bit of a problem trying to do the old way of extending things, and we did that by using the object.create, right? So object capital O, which is the kind of the object superclass for all of JavaScript. It's a built-in class, right? The object superclass, and the create method allows us to create an empty object. And online, actually, if you look at, I'm just gonna refresh this. If you look at my repository, I don't know why I'm going there. If you look at lesson, what the heck? There we go. 9 or 8 from last week, from 2 weeks ago, you can see that I actually updated it. So if you look at scripts, and if you look at objects, and if you look at student, I'm using the old way here. I actually put the old way up last week. And this is how you would do it. Okay, so we talked about last week, or the week we were together last, how to put together JavaScript using the old way. I'm going to make this a little bigger so you guys can see this again. So just to recall, because we kind of skimmed over this, we didn't have time. We're running out of time. So again, we have student at the outside, and then we have this function on the inside, right? So we have a function on the outside, almost like two iffies. We have the iffy on the outside, and then we have the iffy on the inside. Okay, here's the iffy on the inside. And really what we use the iffy for as a closure is to encapsulate the class. So we have the class definition. We just called it student as an example. And then we use the enclosure. Think of it that way. We encapsulate the class, close it up, put it in an envelope, whatever you want to look at it, or a container. And we do that by using the secondary iffy. So the first iffy is on the outside for the module, and the second iffy is on the inside for the class. Okay, this is this. And then we have this part right here. This part is really constructor notation, right? So this is our constructor. And what we're doing here is we're saying something like this. We're saying objects.person, which is the person class, which we already defined, call. So we can use the call method that's built into all objects, including functions, by the way, to call that function. Because remember, at the base level, it doesn't matter what we call it, quote unquote, a class. Everything is a function in JavaScript at the end of the day. It uses functional kind of notation. I'm passing it a reference. When we use the call method, we pass in a reference to this context, which is this constructor, right? And then I pass in name and age that I take in from the constructor pattern that I establish for my student. So student needs name, age, and student ID. Person, you just needed name and age. I pass in a reference to this, and then I pass in my name and age because the super constructor requires this, the super class, which is the person, right? And then I establish my new property, which is student ID, right, for the student class. Okay, so that's what this constructor is. So this is really the constructor for the student. Okay, a little bit different. And the one line that's different is this line right here. Okay, objects.person. Actually, I could have, if it wasn't part of the objects module, I would just call person.call. Person.call, and then person being the person class. Okay, then to do the prototypical inheritance, and this works, by the way, if you try it out, I say student.prototype, and I use object.create, and I refer to the person.prototype, right, as the prototype of the student. Okay, remember prototypes, what they are? Prototypes are our blueprint, if you will, and by default, when I kind of create a class by doing those curly braces or by using the new keyword or by whatever I'm doing, new object as an example or new class, however I define the class, right? I have a default prototype. And all I'm doing here is I'm overwriting my default prototype with the prototype that comes from the person class. So it's a little different than how it's done with object-oriented programming in C# or in Java, right? I actually have a prototype. I have an object that I've been assigned to. By default, I get this object. And then I'm saying, hey, don't look at that object. Look at this other one, the one that's being pointed to by the person.prototype, the one that I've defined when I made my person class. So that's the first thing, okay? So that's how we do the inheritance piece. So I'm inheriting the prototype that comes from the person class. That's what's happening, okay? And then there is a bit of a problem. Sometimes what happens is the constructor gets destroyed when we do that. So we set that back up. And that's why we do that inside of the student closure. So here's the actual student class closure. Here's the constructor. And all I'm saying is that the constructor for the student is actually going to be this, just to make sure that nothing gets overwritten. Because sometimes that happens if I can get you to get the door. Okay, so that's what this is. And then we add our own method. So we add our own, a method that's attached to the new student class, right? Only to the student class, not to the person class, right? And we return the student back out. Okay, so that's what's happening here. That's how we create a class as an example. And then we attach the student class to the objects module. Okay, that's what's happening here. Okay, so take a look at this code. All right, this is the old way. And then I'm flipping back to the new way. A lot easier, right? New way, easy. Old way, more challenging, but there's still, it's not impossible to overcome the syntax here. I think it's good syntax. But I want you to remember, always remember, just because it's easier on the front end, like this, it's still doing this on the back end, like this, okay? And if you don't know that, then it can cause you problems when you do your programming and when you do your JavaScript stuff. Okay, so questions around from what we talked about before. Just again, just reviewing the stuff we talked about, because we talked about objects, creating new classes, and all that kind of stuff a couple weeks ago when we were together. Any questions around this pattern? You may have seen it also some other ways out there. There are other ways to do the same things. But always remember, and just in case you forget, you want to make a class, let's say, for something. You want to make it do something. You can always go to TypeScript. I recommend going to typescriptlang.org, taking a look in the playground, and then creating your class right here. Okay, so here's an example of this name and says hello thing, right? And then worst case scenario, you can always look on the right side where you see the JavaScript and say, oh yeah, I forgot how to do that. I remember, because it'll write nice, clean JavaScript for you over here. One thing it won't do, which I lament, to be honest, right? I lament. It won't do the extension part properly. This is what we call a convenience method, or a helper method, if you will. And the helper method makes it so that it's more compatible when it comes to inheritance. Okay, from from an inheritance perspective. Okay, that's what it does. Okay, and we have the person and student and all that stuff. Okay, so I just wanted to remind you that this is a tool you can definitely use. There's playgrounds out there. And the other one that we talked about also, just as a reminder, is Babel REPL, which is for ES6 specifically, not for TypeScript. Right? So again, you can use this person class. Notice that we doesn't handle the module pattern in any way, right? You'd have to create that module pattern yourself. And then again, what it does is it does its own convenience method up here. So there's always a convenience method that's being, kind of created on one side or the other. On the left, notice for Babel REPL, just one more thing to talk about is remember that you can uncheck some of the ways it's being converted. Take a look at this on the right now. So once I kind of uncheck this stuff, right? It says unexpected token on line 13, right? Or it doesn't understand what to do. If I start checking some of these back on, right? Especially with React and stuff, it'll start putting things back, right? So I can undo these ones. ES 2015 loose, what it does is it allows you to accept some less compatibility. This way, if I uncheck this one, this is again a convenience method that Babel uses to make it more compatible. Actually, there's two here. There's this one and this one. That all gets added into the header just to make it so that when you do your classes and objects, they become easier for browsers to understand, even in earlier browsers like that accept only ECMAScript 3. All right, ES3. All right, so I wanted to mention this again because at the end of the day, I think one of the challenges is we tend to forget. I'm going to go back to this one, especially if I minify, right, what it does. There's the minification method. It actually minifies the code, which is kind of cool. That's why I kind of like Babel REPL in some ways. Minify and prettify. There's prettify. There's minify, right? Because what it does is it allows you to play with stuff, play with classes on the left side, and then see the actual code on the right side. All right. So whether you're using TypeScript playgrounds or using Babel REPL, I think they're both two great tools to use to, if you don't remember how to do object-oriented notation by using a constructor. Okay. So we talked about that last week. But we need to move on with more advanced stuff. You might say, wow, this is like really advanced, like really tough, right? How do we get more advanced than this? Well, making your own classes is cool, but you don't have a lot of context right now to do much else. There's a couple of things we can go, and this is where I kind of, go to you and say, think about this now. I want to use classes and objects. So we need to know how to use stuff that's already there, right? A lot of times we make our own classes and objects, but we also want to use the ones that are built into JavaScript. And I kind of skipped that part. So I'm going to go over that this week a little bit because I need you still to know some of that stuff that exists already in JavaScript that you don't have to reinvent, okay? Because we never want to reinvent the wheels. Let's go back to this part. So back to Chapter 7 as an example. I'm going to skip over some stuff we've covered, but really, because you've known this. So again, the idea of prototypes, the idea that objects you create and the objects that are created by other people. We did this part. We need to do this part, okay? A little bit, at least. Otherwise, the other professors are going to get mad at me. So again, we're going to go back here and see that these are some built-in classes that we can use. I'm going to make this a little larger. I know it's hard to see this on the PowerPoint when it's so small. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. So we have things like arguments. That's the arguments class. That exists. And what it does, like it says here, it gets arguments from a function. Okay. Because remember how it works. What if I make a function in JavaScript? And I'm just going to go back to my files to do this, to give you the example. Again, I'm using this new file that I've created. And I'm going to go to my core, in my core folder. I've just reorganized last time we were together in my app.js. And I have a bunch of all this stuff here that I've commented out because we commented this stuff out and we put it up online, right? So we don't need this part. So I'm kind of reverting back to an earlier version of what we had. I have my start method as an example and my main method down here. Start method, we do initialization. Main method, we do actual work, right? Even though I have my person object and my student object, I'm not going to use them today. So I'm going to remove some of the stuff from the start method up here. So I'm going to remove these things. And I'm going to remove all this stuff because I don't want to use any of the stuff that I have here. I want to kind of create new things. All right, so like it says here, I want to make a new function. We're going to do some demos, okay? So that way you understand how some of this is used. I don't need these things either. And let's go into the new function here. So we're going to say function, my function. And right now, when we define the function, it doesn't take any parameters. Yeah. And but what you can do is you can use the arguments class that's built in. Notice that it's a capital A arguments, right? So if I say arguments, right, and if I say dot, and then I can say length, right? So there's the length. So arguments length, okay? And I can print that out. So let's do a console log. And I'm going to use the backtick. So I'm going to use template, the new string template notation that's part of ECMAScript 6, again, just like we normally do. And then arguments length is what I want. So I'm going to put $ and the curly brace to indicate that that's what I want to include, right? I want to pump that out. And I want to say, and this is the arguments length. So I'm going to kind of put in an arguments length. That's the actual text. And then arguments length will be the object that I'm injecting inside my template string. Yeah.
But the argument. Okay.
Yeah. Wait for it. So arguments length. Arguments is the class. Length is the property of the class that's built in. And I want to call my function from the main. So I'm going to go to my function. Call it. And now I want to run this thing, so I'm going to go control backtick, right? And I'm going to say light-server to run that stuff, just like we've normally done in the past, which brings it up. And I'm going to go into my inspect and take a look at my console, and the length is 0, right? So arguments, capital A, length, right, is 0, okay, that I put out. Okay, cool. Well, let's, I don't know, I'm going to send an argument in there, like, you know, 1, let's make a few arguments. 1, 5, you know, Tom, you know, Bob, and true. All right, I'm just saying, right? So 1, 5, Tom, Bob, and true. I'm sending it to my function, and you're like, well, wait, my function, it doesn't have any arguments. But wait, look at that, arguments is 5. So even though my function doesn't take anything. I didn't declare my function that takes any arguments. One thing you should also know is that JavaScript doesn't care, right? You can send it as many or as little arguments as you like, right? This is a negative about JavaScript, by the way, not a positive in my mind, only because you haven't declared anything, and yet it's going to accept it anyway. Some people like this because the great thing is that means all arguments by default are optional in JavaScript. Positive or negative, however you want to see that, right? And it gives JavaScript, again, going back to that idea, and I'm not sure if it's like you know how they say when you have a bug, it's actually a feature, just to kind of not to fix the bug, right? It's a feature, right? So too, I think when they made JavaScript the first time, you know, they said it's flexible, right? And sometimes I feel like that when it comes to JavaScript. It's not true, but I'm saying sometimes it makes me feel that, you know, JavaScript's so flexible, like I said. It's like a big flexible rope that you can hang yourself with. And this will hang you. Like, I mean, if you think about, you know, sending as many arguments as I want in here, and yet it just tells me the argument's length. All right, so that's the arguments array. What else can I do with, or the arguments option? So I can do other things with arguments, right? I know what the arguments have. What if I just print out, let's just kind of do a console log, right? And I want to print out arguments, just the arguments property itself. So I just want to print that out, right? Let's see what that does. So going back, printing it out, I get this, right? I actually get all the arguments. It actually creates an arguments, see capital A? Capital A arguments, right? Array. That's what it does. So is it an array, right? Or an object? What do you think it is? Because there's a couple things here. There's this, it looks like an array. It has a bunch of properties, data, if you will, right? The arguments are a bunch of data pieces, right? But you have this, which is callee, and you have length, right? So therefore, arguments, although it looks like an array, it's array-like, it's really an object, right? So it's our class, if you will. Because callee is my function, right? And you can see that the name my function is where the arguments is being called. That's the name, right? By the way, I can return all this stuff. I can return out callee, arguments.callee. I can return out, and there's a reason for this, because imagine if I send a message to some random function, which I can do, and I can get back some result. I want to know which function I called. That's the callee. Caller and the callee. Caller is the one that's calling. I don't have access to that. The callee is the function that's been called. Okay? You can't immediately see the uses for this, but there are interesting uses. All right, so again, you can see that I have all these arguments. So if I know that that's the truth, right, then I could say that, well, if I expect that argument 0 is of type, a certain type, I can check that, right? So arguments we can treat like an array. It's array-like, okay? And if I want to make it an array, I can do that with another class. So let's get rid of this. We know we have multiple arguments. I want to make arguments an array. Yeah.
It looks like an array because it's handling a collection.
Looks like it. It looks like it's a collection of arguments, right? It is like a collection of arguments, but it also has some other properties that arrays don't have, right? So therefore, it's not exactly an array. It's array-like. But what if we want to make it an array? We can say that let, my array, right, equal to array. Here's the array class, right, dot from. And then in brackets, we can put the array-like object in there, which is the arguments object. Okay. Then if I push it out, console log, and I put my array, right, and then what I can do is I can print that out, and you can see now that it's actually an array, right? And there is no, it has length because all arrays have length, but there is no callee or other things that the object would have. There is no object.prototype other than the array prototype. Notice that this is made from the array prototype. That's what it is, right? Remember, all things we use in JavaScript at the end of the day come from some prototype, which means everything is an object, if you think about it. So there it is. There's my argument array. My argument array is with 1, 5, Tom, blah, 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 right? And now I've converted arguments, which is an array-like object, into an array. More like an array. I can use it like an array now. Exactly, right? All the data that came from arguments, I copied into my array. That's what I'm doing. Argument still exists by itself and is immutable. Can't touch it, right? Not the way it is right now. But this, my array, is my array. I can do whatever I want with it. I've made a copy, right? Like a temp variable. So if that's true, then I can check to see what type it is, right? So, okay, if I say type of, remember we tried this before, type of my array, right? And then the first argument of the array, right? If my array, type of my array is equal to number, right? Can I do that? Or would it be do I put it in brackets like this? What, do you guys remember what it is? Is it like this? So if it's a number, then console.log, let's print it out. My array, we'll use old way. My, or item is a number. Okay. So if type of my array, number, right? Okay, and let's see if that works. So item is a number, right? And we know this because I passed in a number, but what if I made it something else like false, right? Item is not a number, right? Because it didn't come up, right? So we can check the type, and we kind of really skimmed over type of, but it's a really important little piece of built-in functionality. Type of my array. What's the type of my array? But not my array. My array is 0. The first element or the 0th element of my array if it's a number. That's what we're checking here. Okay, but I want to cycle through each of the elements of my array, and I want to print out what they are. So for that, we can use a switch statement. So let's do a switch, right? And this is interesting. Can we do type of, my array? And we want to put some kind of, element in there. I want to kind of switch through my array and put in an element. Can I do that? So first of all, I need a for loop or for each loop to surround this. So I want to kind of do a for each, right? And now that I have my array as an array-like object, I can say my array, right, for each element in my array. I could do that. Or I could use a for loop. Remember we talked about loops way back? I can use a for loop. Let's use a for loop this time around, where my index is the array. We're just going to type in my array for the length, right? So there's my array. And then in here, what I want to do is I want to switch out. I want to switch where the type of, right, my array index, right, whatever the switch the type of is, case if it's a number, right, then do something. Case if it's a string, do something else.
Yeah.
I'm recording.
Can we please do it?
Yes, go ahead. Yep.
Thank you.
Case if it's a, and notice it pulls up a bunch of other things here, right? If it's a Boolean, right, do something else. Case if it's a object. Okay, we're going to talk this out. Let's see what these are. Do something else. These are all the cases we have. I'm doing this long way. There's a shorter way of doing this. You guys can probably figure that one out. Yes? Does count, right? So case if it's a function, we'll do the functions. We can also pass a function in this as a argument, right? So all of them. Case if it's a symbol, we don't know what that is. And case if it's a undefined. Send that into. These are all the cases, right? In fact, maybe for undefined, what we want to say is if default, for the default case, if it's undefined, do something else, right? So these are all the different things. In fact, maybe we don't care about symbol. We'll just use the default, something that's not we don't care about. Function we do care about, but maybe for the symbol, we'll do the same thing. We won't say symbol, we'll just say for function, string, number, Boolean, or object, do something. And in fact, the do somethings is going to be a different print statement, right? So a console log, again, you can think of a nicer, easier way to do this, right? A console log item, actually we'll use a template string. We'll say item and then $, index, right? Maybe format that a little differently. Item index, right? With a space maybe would be nice. Item index is a number. Now you can figure this out a little better, right? I don't need a big switch statement for this. I don't need a switch statement. I can use something else. But I want to do this. I want to just to demonstrate what you can do. If you wanted to, let's say I had a bunch of cases. I didn't just want to do a console log. I wanted to do other things. Then you would do like some kind of switch. And of course, if I wanted to do a switch statement like this, so this is a number, this is a string, this is a Boolean, this is an object, this is a function. You know what? This whole switch, right, as an example, it's big, and I can probably extract this into a function. Let's do that. So cut all this out. This is the for loop, and we'll make another function up here, which was, I'll make a function that's called display type, right? Where I pass in the index, right? And then I kind of type that in there, right? And not, actually the index is wrong. I should probably pass in my array, and index. There we go. I'll pass in those two things in the function, my array and index. which would satisfy this. And then display type is what I want to put in here, where I say display type, where I need my array and index, my array and index. There we go. Right. So I'm calling my display type by calling this one. All I'm doing is I'm moving that stuff so I don't have it. I'm not cluttering my for loop with a bunch of statements I want to make. I'm just moving it off into something else. Okay, let's see if this works. Let's see if I made a mistake or whatever. And yeah, so item 0 is a Boolean, item 1 is a number, item 2 is a string, item 3 is a string, item 4 is a Boolean. So it kind of prints out what those things are. Okay, so you can do that type checking if you want. You were asking if there's different types, and does it detect? It will detect the different types that there are, because we do have types in JavaScript, but JavaScript is loosely typed, which means we can change those types anytime, right? So that's what this does. This for loop just displays the type, right, as an example. I can also send in another function. So false 5, Tom, Bob, true, and let's send in some other stuff. Let's send in my my main function as a reference. I can do that too, which is kind of weird, right? I'm sending the whole function. Let's send the whole main function in there too, right? Which is kind of recursive, actually, right? So let's see what that does. Yeah, so item 5, that's a function. You can detect that main is a function. It has a function signature, right? And then that's cool. So that's all the stuff that, it's a silly example, but the example that I wanted to cover was these two things right here. Boolean creates a Boolean object. Date is something I want to go over with you in more detail. Error, a runtime error. Function itself, you can create new function objects using the function keyword. Global variables, and different types of global variables. So for example, if I go back, that are built into JavaScript. So if I was to do something like the keyword global and then dot, you can see that if there's any global variables in JavaScript, I can add to the global namespace, which we're not going to do. So global dot, right? That works. It's old school. I wouldn't do it that way. The JSON object, which we're going to talk about next week. Math, we've used this before. Yeah?
Can we create a global custom global?
You can. Doesn't make sense though. Better to make your own object. That's why I'm not going to go into too much detail. Regular expression, we talked about. String contains methods manipulating text strings. This is good. But what I want to focus in on this math function, and then we'll go back into the date, math and date for now. Okay. So I want to make a random number generator. Maybe I want to make a game, as an example, and I want to create a dice roller. Okay. And we've done that actually. My other classes did a dice rolling program as well. So I just wanted to show you this as what we can do with types, with the idea of type of my array and the type of argument that you're going to have, right? Because that's what we're doing. We're converting arguments to my array, and that's why we did this function. So to show you that the arguments itself is fluid. I think it's a really good understanding of functions to understand that, hey, whether I send in 1 argument, 10 arguments, or 0 arguments, even if I'm not asking for them. So let's say I ask for 3 arguments, but I pass in 10. Still have access to those arguments. They're still being physically passed to the function, whether the function likes it or not. I'm forcing those arguments in to that function, right? And most of the time, they're ignored, right? So when you pass it into the function, and if you call the function, and if you don't use those arguments, and the function returns, those variables are done. They're temporarily created, and they're done. But whenever you pass something big into a function, like another function, right, by accident, you're actually creating a whole set of variables and other things that are being passed into that function, which could be memory intensive, right? So we don't need this. I just wanted to show you this, just to give you an example. This, again, I'm just demoing. So, you don't have to copy and paste, but just understand how this works, right? So I don't need any of this stuff. And I'm doing this. What did I do here? I'm doing this because I just want you guys to understand more of how this stuff works, because the inner workings of JavaScript is, I think, part of what we're doing in this course. Just trying to understand the back end stuff. So I don't care about this now. I want to make a random number generator. Okay, and I want to generate different kinds of random numbers. In fact, I want to create a random number range. Okay, I want to be able to create, a random range between two numbers, any two numbers that I want. That's the function that I want to create. So I can make any dice that I want. Okay. So a good example of this, if I want to create a new function called random range. Okay, random range. I want to have a minimum value and a maximum value. Okay, for my function. So this is my function. I only need these two arguments. And what the function is going to return is the random number, right? So I'm going to say that there's going to be some kind of random number, right, that I'm going to return. So return random number. Okay? So whatever that's the line of my function. I'm going to use the math function to do this, right? So this is a very simple example, but let's just go into this. I'm going to say that random number is equal to, and I'm doing this in multiple lines, by the way, right? Is going to be math.random, because math has a bunch of stuff. Let me go back to math. Math has log, math has max, min, all this kind of stuff. Yes?
There's no class for random.
No. Yeah, the random class, math.random. But there you have to make anything else you want. So if I go math.random generates a number between 0 and 1, right? So it returns a pseudo-random number between 0 and 1. That means that all the values between 0 and 1 are decimal between 0 and 1. So everything from 0, 0.1, or 0.00001 to all the way to, 0.99999, up to, but not including 1, right? So that's the thing. So it doesn't include 1, 0, and 1, between 0 and 1. And if I just did this, so math.random by itself, and if I go back to my log here, my main, and I say something like, I want to call math.random, so I'm going to say console log, right? And I'm going to say, I'm going to call my random range, right? I want to do a random range between, for now, well, between 1 and 6. Okay? Random range between 1 and 6. It's going to return, remember, it returns a number because I defined a return for the function, right? A random range between 1 and 6. And let's see what it prints out. It prints out 0.48, right? Well, I just asked to print up math.random right now, right? 0.48, and let's just for for argument's sake, I'm just going to put this inside of a one of these. So I'll say so random number, or we'll say generated number. Generated number is equal to some kind of random range between 1 and 6. We can do this, right? Because what you're putting it in the template string, just like normal. Even though random range is my own function, it's still going to return a number between 1 and 6. I also want to put, well, that's what we're hoping. We want to make it so that I can format it, and we'll add the formats that we have here. Instead of font, bold, and this, I'll do something else. So make it so that the font weight is bold, sure, but the size will be like 16. And maybe we'll add a color. So we'll say color of it is going to be something like, I don't know, green. Okay. So that's just going to make it so that it looks nice when I do it. Here's my generated number, 0.1888, whatever it is going to be. It's pretty long, right? That's not 1 and 6. Okay. So to do 1 and 6, just like other programs, this is classic. You'll see this as well. C++, C#, and all that also generates pseudo-random numbers between 0 and 1. That's a standard way of doing it. Then, of course, I can multiply this by the max, right? Which basically says that, I want to go to the max, whatever the max value is. I haven't used the min yet. I'm going to use the min, right? All right, so there is, and if I save this, so times max, you can see that now it's 3.0, blah, 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 blah. And if I was to, refresh the screen again, it's going to be 5.933, and then it's going to be 2.4, blah, 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 right? Okay, very cool. Yeah, I'm going to round it. We're going to use another math function called floor. So math.floor, and we're going to surround this stuff, math.random, just by itself. And we're going to round the results, right? But then if we did that, then we'd lose the multiplication. So we're going to have to take this part here and put it here. And that would give us a rounded result between 0 and 6, but not including 6. Not including 6, right? Okay, so cool. And then 2, right? So we got that. And if I refresh, we're going to keep seeing that we should be able to get something like a 0. 0 doesn't make any sense, right? Because we want to make it min. So we're going to add min to the end of it, plus min, right? Which actually makes us that goes between 1 and 6 because we're adding 1 to it. Careful. I can increase, there's no type check, there's no checking here, right? So I can make the minimum bigger than the maximum right now, right? Just saying, right? I can make them equal. I can make them negative. I can do whatever I want. This is not a safe function, right? I can do whatever I want with this function, okay? I'm just demonstrating math.floor and math.random because math is part of our library. You can do a lot of other math functions too. Sine and cosine, tangent, and all that kind of stuff are all built in. Very, very useful. I may get you guys to do something with random numbers later on the semester, right? But because all games require some kind of randomization, we may do a small game. Okay, so then this is the the stuff that it works out to be. And if I go back now, you see the number is 5. And if I refresh again a bunch of times, you can see that I get a number between 1 and 6. We should see if we can get the full range that we're looking for. There's 6, right? And I want to be able to use this function when I click a button. All right, so now I need some front end stuff. Here's my index.html. Let's make a button to roll the the number, right? So here we've got my my jumbotron, and I want to add a button in my on the front side. So we'll say button, and oops, with an ID of, we'll call this the roll button, right? Here's my roll button, and then the thing will be roll. We'll just say so it rolls, and we'll give it a bit of a class so it looks nice. We'll say class is equal to button and button dash primary, right? Because that's just using Bootstrap. We don't want to forget Bootstrap, right? Because Bootstrap is cool. And if I was to kind of save that and go back, you can see now we have a roll button, right? Doesn't do anything right now, but I want to be able to click the roll button and then generate other numbers in the console, right? But what about generating a number right here on the actual website? That'd be cool, right? So let's generate a number. We want a place for generating the number, and we're going to put in the generated number. So we'll say we'll put it in a div tag with a a kind of an ID of generated number, or the roll. We'll call the result, right? Something like that, right? And we'll put it in there. We'll drop it in the result inside this div tag, right? So we haven't done any kind of anything in there, right? But we'll add some kind of class, which will make an alert. We'll make it an alert, and then alert dash warning, some kind of yellow alert. Yellow alert. Right now you can see there's a yellow alert, which gives me this little text box, right? If I really wanted to, I can make it so that it is, instead of alert dash warning, there's also alert dash danger, right? Alert dash danger is red. Oops. Red or pink, something like that, right? And then there's also alert dash success, which is green, right? There's my green area here. And if I want to make this a certain size, as an example, I could make it so that I put it inside of another div tag with a class of row, which is inside of another div tag with a class of column dash medium dash, 2, let's say. Okay, there's this part, and I'll take this result right here, cut it out, and put it into this. And that should give me what I'm looking for, a smaller result, right? Just saying, guys, these are things you can totally do with ease, right? And I can format this so it's different. Maybe it's 2 is too much. Maybe I'll make it 1. Okay. And if I want to put it next to it, I can do that too. I just have to put the roll button inside there, right? So the roll button will be beside the result. So I can say something like, okay, I want to put this in here. In fact, if I want to be really smart about it, I could say that a div with a class of column-medium-1, right? And put that button in there. And now I have 1 and 1, and you can see now that the button and the role kind of appear next to each other, except that the div tag is kind of empty, right? There's nothing it's not that big, right? It's kind of small. And I can change the size. I can make it a bigger size if I want by using a little bit of CSS, because I now have this ID of role button and I have an ID of result. I can go into my, I'm going to keep these, by the way, guys, so I'm not going to erase these ones. I'm going to go to my app.css, and then I can do a little bit of size. So I can say that I'm going to look for a result, something that has a result in it, and I can say that the min-height for this thing is a certain amount of pixels. Let's make it something like, I don't know, 20 pixels. Let's see if that's big enough. No. Let's make it 40 pixels. Yeah, that's better, right? And I also want to give it a bit of margin. So I'll say that margin dash left. We'll give it a margin left of, I don't know, pixels. Just to give it a little bit of a margin. We're just going to mess with my spacing a little bit, but you can see that this is where the result's going to be. Yay. Didn't take long. Okay. All right, cool. So we've got a place to put the result, and I've got a roll button to do something. I want to hook them up, right? Which means I need some way in my app.js to connect to those things. And I'm going to do that up here in my function. So my app variables, I'm going to have my roll button. So let roll button be 1. And I'm also going to say let result be something else, okay? So that's the two things, my roll button and my result. And I want to hook them up. I'm going to do that in the start method, because the start method does all my initialization. I'm going to do all my initialization in here. I'm going to say something like roll button, right, is equal to document.getElementById. We're going to say roll button. Yay, I got my roll button. And then I'm going to also say results, right, is equal to document.getElementById, and then results. So now I have access to those two things, right? I've created access to those two things. We've done this a million times. We should know how to do those things. There's my roll button and result. So I have access to those things. Yay. Great. Now in my main, this is where I'm going to do my funky stuff. So console log is good, but I want to print out everything inside those areas. So first of all, I want to set up my event handler from my role. So I'm going to say roll.addEventListener. Oops, roll button. Roll button.addEventListener on click. I'm going to do kind of inline event. We'll do one of these, and we'll say that when the roll button is clicked, I want to change the result, right? So I'm going to say that result dot, and again, I want to think about this, but result is actually a div tag, and inside the div tag, I want to put in my result, which is going to be the inner HTML, right? But I could put inner HTML of the thing, or it's not text, because div tags don't have text. So I probably want to make it like inner HTML. Notice that it's not giving me any code hinting here, because it doesn't understand what result is, right? So result inner HTML is equal to, and again, what I want to do is this part right here, random number 1 to 6, right? But I want to be able to save the same result that's shown here, because if I generate it once, if I do this twice, the numbers might be different, right? So I want to do this part right here, this random range stuff. I want to do it in some kind of variable. So I'll say, like, you know, whenever I click it up here, I want to talk about like let roll itself here, right? And I'm going to say inner HTML is equal to this. I'm going to pass in roll over here, right? And I'm going to say that there are going to be two things I'm going to do. I'm going to calculate the roll. When I roll, I'm going to say roll is equal to this random range 1 to 6, and then my result is going to be roll. Okay, that's pretty simple stuff. Like, I didn't do anything that's out of whack here. So this should all work. So it says undefined right now, right? Because in the beginning we don't have a roll; it's empty. If I click roll, it gives me 2, but oh man, and 4 and 6, and I can generate the roll, whatever that is. I can make that a little bigger because it's just a text result. So if I want to, I can format that and blah blah and whatever. But this is weird, right? I mean, I did this, and, well, it's not printing out because this part is outside of there, right? So I'm going to take this part, and it only does it once. I'm going to put that in there. So it's only going to print out my console log when I roll. From my little, this is the little event listener that does everything, right? That rolls from 1 to 6, okay? If that makes sense to you. And again, you know, if I want to format this roll, let's do it here in code. Okay, so this is a practical example. I want to change this size of my inner HTML of my results, right? So how do I do that? How do I change the results of my the style? I can say result.style. Right? I can say that now because we don't know what result is. Okay, I just want to point this out. That's why we're getting this really weird non-code hinting stuff. Right? We're not getting any code hinting for this because results we declared way out here, right? And we know that results is this HTML element, right? And HTML elements can be styled, right? So if I want to style an HTML element, if I forgot how to do this, then I can just go out here to thing, and I can say HTML elements style, right? Right down. Oh, haha, that's so funny. That is totally funny. HTML element.style. Yeah, and of course it's going to take me to W3 schools, the style object, which is what I really want to show you. And you can talk about style, border, style, but I really want not the border, but the size. So the, you know, kind of the font size, which is what I want to do. So there's my, oops, wrong one. Font size, this one. And if you notice, this is an example of it. So I can say whatever it is, dot style, dot font size, lowercase with a capital Z is equal to whatever I want, right? So I can say dot results dot style. Oh, did I do it wrong? No, let's not do it there. Let's do it here. Dot style dot font size. I can say before now then I did it, right? But I'm modifying the size of the result is equal to something like, I don't know, we'll say like 30 pixels, right? And let's see if that works. So it worked. It's just a little bit too big. 30 pixels is way too big. So let's go 20 pixels and try that out. That's too big too. I mean, that's right, but see, I made the minimum width, the minimum height this way. And I kind of make it so that, you know, I've padded it. I've done a bunch of other stuff to it. That's why it looks the way it does. If I want to make the roll button this thick too, I could make it a larger button, right? So button dash large does that, I believe. It makes it larger. And I generated that in the index.html, which is in here when I made my button, right? I said button dash button dash primary, and I can say button dash large. And I think there's other sizes too. Button dash large. If I'm not wrong. No, it's too close. Almost the right size. Almost, right? Let's do this again. Add a little bit more margin. Let's add 15 pixels of margin. There you go. Really playing with this stuff. Okay, so, and yes, okay, not that perfect. Let's try it again. Let's try 20 pixels of margin. Okay, and there we go. It's not great. I'm still not happy with it, but you know, I can fool around with this all day long. But let's just make it so it's, I don't know, 24 pixels of space. All right, it's not perfect, but at least it rolls, okay? That's what I wanted to show you. Rolls, and it generates the numbers here and the same number that's here and here. All right, so, okay, it's neat. You know, this is nice, but it'd be nice if our web interface asked us how big we wanted it to be, right? So I don't have to put it in here or whatever. It's going to ask me what it is. So maybe, you know, what size do I want? I want to do the min-max thing. Okay, so how do I get that information in here? Does anyone know? Form, right? I need a form. I need inputs. Inputs I got to get from a form. Or, that's one option, I could use controls, right? I could use a control like another button. Like, you know, minimum. I have a minimum button. Keep clicking minimum with some kind of other control, like you know, some kind of, is there other controls that do that? Like, do you remember the controls that kind of go up and down? Is there anything like that? Is there? What other controls do we have that allow us to go up, kind of increase and increment and decrement the number? Do we have some kind of control like that? Is there? What? A spinner? Slider could do it. Slider's pretty cool. I can put a slider in place. Spinner, let's use a slider. So min, max, maybe we have two sliders, one for the min, one for the max, right? So we can kind of slide in and out. All right, we haven't really done those kind of controls, so this is kind of neat. So again, if I was going to look at those, if I said HTML slider, right? Then you go to, here's a range. So there's my default. And I can change this is the actual handle, or the thumb is what it's usually called. Or I want to change the slider here. This doesn't change anything. And you can create, this is a custom one. These are different sizes. And you can see that they've got this thing where you have an input with a range of min, 1, and max, which is kind of neat. Except I want to do it the bootstrap way, right? I can't just use this. So I say git bootstrap. And I'm hoping that there's going to be something in the bootstrap that does it. So we're going to look at components. And I want to do some kind of slider. And maybe not component, maybe something else. There's buttons, there's carousels, there's other things. Navs and popovers and scroll spy, but we don't have something else. Let's go into content maybe. And we have tables. I don't see that there's a specific one for bootstrap, unless I'm wrong. Maybe you guys can find something that I can't. But I don't see that there's a special one for bootstrap. I would like to, so that you can style it the way you want, but we can always look it up too if I can't find it. So I can something like bootstrap slider, right? It's like carousel. Yeah, there isn't anything that's built in. We'd have to build it ourselves. So we're not going to do that right now. But we're going to use a slider that's built into W3 Schools. We're just going to get rid of these two things. And we'll just use one of these. You can see that they've got some examples here of how to make a slider and, you know, control a slider, make a round slider. And the sum of it is going to be CSS. I was hoping that Bootstrap can give it to us, but we'll just copy the CSS from here. But this is the HTML we need. We need two of these. We need a slider that gives me a range from, let's say, instead of 1 to 100. Should we have a minimum? Should we have 100? Can you do like a random number between 100 and something else? I don't know. Maybe I want to do random numbers for die rolls. So maybe a random number between 5 and 50 or something like that. So maybe we'll do a 1 and 100 on both sides. I don't know. Let's check this out. It's going to present problems for us, though, in the long run, because once we do ranges, we have to think about limiting the ranges from one to the other. Here's a row button with our medium, and we're going to do another row. So above this, we're going to do another row, div with a class of row. And inside the div with a class of row, we're going to have two sliders, right? So one of them is going to be a div with a class of column dash medium. We'll say we'll give the slider like 3 columns each, right? Inside the row. And next to it, we'll have another one with another div with a column that's medium 3 again, right? So here's our 2 columns, right? Sorry, I know I'm doing the shorthand, guys. I do apologize. If you don't know the Emmet stuff, then you're like, what the hell is he doing? How did he do that so quick? It's not a big trick. So I've got 2 classes, and this is where my sliders are going to be, right in here and here. And I want to add this in. Yeah.
And it's fine to range input trap. I don't know if it'll work.
Let's use our sliders now. Later on.
Well, it is a slider.
Is it? Okay.
It's under range inputs.
Okay. And this is under get bootstrap stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go back there. We'll go back there in a second. All right. So we have 2 sliders. The type is range. Okay. So that's what it is. Let's see if we can. Let's say if we can get bootstrap. Let's see if we can modify the stuff, because I like to use the bootstrap way. If we're using bootstrap for everything, might as well.
It's in the forms.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Search range.
So under content then, under content forms or under components. Yeah. There we go. So there we go. And form controls. This is good. Sizing, ranged inputs. Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for. All right. I want to have this. some kind of label and this class, which is what I was looking for. Range control. If I don't have that, then I'm not going to have it. So range control. So both are going to be from 1 to 100 as an example, right? 1 to 100. The minimum value is going to be 50. We're not going to do that. We're going to say the value initially is 1 and 6. All right, so 1 and 6, right? So that's the ranges. Let's see how that looks, first of all, before we continue. So a couple of sliders. All right, 1 and 6. And maybe some space would be nice. That didn't really style that great, John. What the hell? I thought it would work, John. Right? John, you failed. Failed, right? ID is form control range. Obviously, we want to do this. We want to give each range an ID so we can do something with JavaScript, right? So class is slider. Oh, that's why. Haha. Slider. You guys. That's why it got overwritten. It's not your fault, John. It's my fault. I'm copying and paste. That's what it is, right? And my range, it's going to be min range and max range. That's where it's going to be, right?
There's other versions of it as well.
No, don't say anymore. It's enough, right? We're going to get mad now. All right. What the?
Like colored blue and stuff.
Arg. You're giving me. Oh yeah, it is. It does give you this thing. I don't know if I like that one.
Search range, control F.
Come on, right?
Lower down. Towards the bottom.
All right, I'm going. Yeah, unfortunately for Bootstrap has the stuff there. Sometimes you need to know exactly what you're doing. We need to know where to look, right? And yeah, there is a bunch of them, but oh, there it is. Okay, so range, this one.
Yeah.
Range, custom dash range, custom range 1, but that's just type as range. Oh, blue. A blue one. I like the blue one. Yeah, but wait a minute. It says custom range, max 0 to 100, 0 to 5. And then the ID is custom range 2. The class is custom range, though. But don't you have to fill in the custom range? Custom file. I thought you had to change the custom range. Okay, well, that's fine. Form control range, and now it's just going to be custom range. Okay, that's really weird, but okay. Custom dash range. I don't think this is going to work. I'm wasting a lot of time playing with something that I want to move on from. This wasn't my intention, I swear. All right. Yes. Okay, John, you win. Okay, you're good. You're good. You live another day. No problem. So value 1 and 6 is good. I want to set the custom values. And one more thing, just going back to Bootstrap, what do they do for the ranges? 0 to 5, custom range 2, and step. I can use step, right? So maximum and step is 0.5. I want to make steps. I don't want to go 0.5s. I want to go steps as 1 because that would be really weird. So let's add that in there as another option. We're going to go back to the other one as a reference. So step is equal to 1. I think that's a default too, by the way. But just to specify that I want a step of 1. And I need some spacing because that's way too close, this stuff here, right, to display the range. I want spacing between these two things. So that means I need some additional stuff in here for me to do that, right? But one thing I can do is put a label. Like I want to put some kind of display to display the range. So just like we've done here in the range itself, right? I want to display the range, this value kind of thing that I have down here. And if I'm not wrong, they have a value that they use, slider.value, right? So this is exactly what we did. We said like, okay, well, here's the slider, my range, here's the output, you know, where it's going to go. And then slider.value is going to be output and on input. So when the slider is changed, then we change the value in the slider, right? So that's what I want to do. And I want to create 2 areas basically underneath that show me that range, and I'm going to do that by adding an additional div tag. So some kind of additional div tag in there, right? And this is going to be, we have a min range and max range. So min range value, which is where it's going to go. And this will be the max range value, div with a max range value. Now you can totally do this kind of stuff, right? And let's add the classes again. So we'll say class is equal to alert dash success. So little green classes. We can make anything turn green or red or whatever by using alerts, the alert class in Bootstrap. And going back to this, you can see that there is nothing. I did. I thought I did. Div and a div class mid-range. Oh yeah, and then I want to give it a minimum height because I have to do that too. So I'm going to go back to the minimum height stuff. So I'm going to go back to my app.css, and we'll just say that if I have a minimum range value, that's what I called it. Minimum range value, min range value, and max range value. Yeah. Min range value or max range value, max range value. Either one or the other one, I want to have that the minimum height again is going to be 40 pixels. In fact, if I want to be more accurate, then I want to probably put even the result should be in there, right? So I don't want to pollute my CSS. I could do something like results, min range value, and then just take this out, right? So both rules would apply. Okay, still nothing, right? That's because I put those div tags inside of the other div tag, which is a class. And I guess I could make it another row altogether. Make these separate, but I want to put those into there. And what if I put some value in there like hello, just to type it in? Okay, so that kind of just that space, but there's no alerts in there. What did I do to make the alert happen? I did this, class alert success. Did I not do this properly? Alert success, I did it properly. But it's inside of my, it's because I've got my, oh, derg, that's why. Wow, that was really bad, Tom. I'm like totally not watching today. So I can add that in there too. So I'm going to put that in there. And min range. You know, instead of class, let me do that change. I'll give that the ID. Min range value. Max range value. That's what I was looking for. I thought it was an ID, but it's actually a class, and that's why it's not projecting properly. All right, sorry. I don't need this hello anymore. But I do need that this is printed out there when I maximize the output. I want to take whatever the output is from this one, the input, which is going to be called, if I'm not wrong, min range and max range. So let's get that inside of our code now. I'm going to go here. So I'm going to have two inputs. I'm going to have something called min range and max range, right? Min range, as an example. That's going to be my control, my slider, right? Let max range, let min range value. I'm putting them as globals for now. We'll change them later. Max range value. So those are the things I want to kind of consider. And then inside of our start menu, I'm going to make those connections, right? So in range is equal to documents. Element by ID, right? And that's going to be the slider. That's the slider control itself. We'll say min range, and max range is going to be documents, element by ID, max range. Cool. Min range, max range, and we need the values. And then min range, max range values are actual div tags as well. So min range value. Again, there's so many ways to do the same thing. Oh. And then I'll just copy paste the other one because I'm getting lazy. I do. I copy pasted both wrong. Yes. I want to change this part and this part. All right. So min range max. I've got all these things here. I've set them up. These are all the controls that I want to have access to on the page, right? And now what I want to do is whenever something changes, and this will do something in here inside of the. Notice that the roll button.event listener is inside my main. But remember, this is asynchronous. So it doesn't matter where I put this stuff. If I say like min range dot, and again, it's just like it says on input, if I'm not wrong. On input. But remember, we do the ons. It's like add event listener input. That's what it is. So I can say that. You can go get the door, please. Add event listener input.
Is the emergency call here? Up here?
Yeah. No emergency call.
Thank you.
All right. On input, right? When I do the input, that's neat. Let's do that. Let's check it out and see if that works. All right. So here's my min range input, and we'll put in a console log that says changed. Just checking to see if the event listener works. Okay. First thing, I do things in order. In terms of when I program, I go and I think to myself, okay, I want to make the event listener. Okay, let's check to see if it works. I want to make this thing. Okay, let's check to see if it works. Okay, now let's do it, right? Because if I did all the programming first and I didn't check, I'm just going to be more error prone, right? So I'm already error prone because I'm doing this on the fly here. All right, so let's just do this. So if I do one of these, then I should see input. This is good, right? So I see that it detects the change, okay? Also, I didn't print out the current value yet. I will, but first I want to create these two event listeners. So one is this one, and this input is for the min range, right? And I want to do the exact same one for the max range, because those are the two things that can change: min range and max range, right? Min range and max range. And when I change the range, right, I want to output the value to my inside my min range value, right? So when I kind of go in there and go, min range value dot inner HTML is equal to min range dot value, all right? And then I'll do the same thing, put that over here, and then I'll say max, and then max, and we'll have to adjust the stuff to make it look nice again. And I do apologize for that. But let's go back here, and if I change this, then I get the value, right? Whatever comes up now, right? I also want to initially put a value in there, right? Some kind of value, so you can see that I can go from a minimum to a maximum, whatever that is. I have control. I have the illusion of control, but let's put some stuff in there. So when I start off my app, I want to put stuff in the roll button, and I want to put something in the min range and max range. So it doesn't show just like blank, right? So let's do for the roll button. So I'm going to say that the results.innerHTML for the beginning is going to be some value. So I'm going to say something like roll, because I can put whatever I want. Or, I don't know. Something like none. I don't know. I'll put roll. And then for the min range dot inner HTML, I'll put a value in there, the values that are the defaults, which is going to be the value of 1 and the minimum range, max range dot inner HTML with the value of 6. That's the defaults, because that's the one I want to set them up with. In range value, I'll be okay. What happens when you you know, you don't look at those things. Okay, there. So now I have my values and I can change them. This didn't quite work out. It's not a number. We'll make it 0. There we go. 0. And then when I roll, I'm still good, right? I haven't changed the size of these things yet or that. It changed after when I clicked the button, so I could style them or whatever. But what I want to do now is when I move this stuff and I press the button, it's going to do something. But now we have a problem, right? And this is where I want to handle it with some JavaScript. Okay. So all this stuff up until now we can kind of do, and it's kind of doable. And if I was going to do that, if I say, well, whatever the min range and max range is, so this is my min range value, that is the min range.value and the max range.value. I want to set these up as the random range for 1 and 6. How do I do that, right? Well, I need 2 variables in there instead of the numbers. So instead of 1 and 6, like hard-coded in there, I need the values that I'm going to get back from these, right? Which means I need some more globals, right? So I'm going to set up some stuff that is like let min, we'll call it min, and let max. Again, you could, obviously you would do this differently, but I want you to think about something that I'm doing here. I'm creating a way of rolling numbers, right? And I get all these properties in the wild, right? Where I can encapsulate this stuff and make my own class, right? I want you to think about this for a second. All right, so what I really want is, this is good. I changed the value, but I also want the min to be equal to min range dot value, and I want the max also to be equal to max range dot value. All right, so I wanted those two. So all I've done is I've set aside these 2 variables, and now I'm taking the value that I generate from the slider and putting it inside that variable. That's what I'm doing here. And now this is where you're going to get messed up, because I'm going to put min and max up here, right? Min and max, right? Okay. Well, this doesn't make any much sense because min and max didn't have a value up until now. So somewhere up here, it's probably safe to put a min and max value. So I'll say something like min is equal to 1 and max is equal to 6, right? Means I could probably put min and max here, right? Just in case I feel like changing it later. All right, so yeah, right? And if I change the slider, so I would say 1 to 30. And if I roll, then I should be able to get a value from 1 to 30. Notice that I'm going outside my bounds because I've only assigned 1 column for this. It's pretty small. Let's make it a little bit bigger in my HTML side. Because my alert success is so small, let's make it so it's like, I don't know, 2 columns. And I can generate a number now between 1 and 6, or some other big number like 1 in 100. It's kind of, you know, chunky to do, but I can probably do that. So if I roll, it'll generate a number now, whatever size I want, right? But what happens when I do something like this? Between 30 and 100, will it work? Will it work the way I want it to work? Come on, guys. What do you think? The answer is no. Why? Because it's going to add to 100. It's going to go like from 99 to 120, something like that, right? So we're going to get some weird numbers like this. And also, it kind of kept this thing in there really weird, right? What happened there? Look at some wacky number. Like that's a weird number, right? What happened there, right? Well, no, look at these. That's why I kept this. That's kind of weird, right? So that didn't work well. And if I do something weird, like let's say I do something big, like 100 to 100. So it should just print out like 100, but then it does something else. Huh? That's a bug, right? If I go back to 1, it's something massive, right? It's gonna. So that's a bug. Let's go back and fix that bug. So min max, and then we got our roll, and the roll is a random range between min and max. So we knew that. The result inner HTML is equal to roll. Could this be the problem? So what's the problem? How come it messed up? The which one? Wait a minute. But I went from 1 to 6 again, right? Here, let's show you this again. So think about this, what's happening. I want, because this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to do something and you're like, Tom, I don't know why, but I'm getting this like weird thing happening. This is the original way of doing it, right? Okay, so roll, 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 and it doesn't add. It's nice, 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 right? Even if I put this up, when I put this up to 68, nice, nice, nice. I put this down all the way back to 10 or 12, all good, right? But when I start changing this one, then I get some funky stuff going on, right? What's going on there, right? That's crazy, right? Something's not right. And if I go back, hold on. If I go back to here, it's still wacky, right? And if I go right back to 1, it's still wrong, right? So once I mess with this one, I mess with the whole thing. That's the problem, all right? So what am I doing here? So I'm saying min range value. Here's my minimum range. Here's my maximum range. This is input. These are 2 inputs, min range and max range. So when I detect when these things change, right? I'm saying the min is min range.value, and min range.value is the thing that I'm getting, right? So that's the exact same code that I've used for both. It works on the positive side, but on the negative side, something's not right. Something's just not right, right? All right, so let's go back to your idea. So random range is what I'm getting, min and max, right? Okay. So if it was minimum and max, then going back to here. So I'm saying let random number. I'm getting a min up here and a max right here, and I'm returning a number. The what? Here? No, that's the comparison. This is an assignment. Yeah. So that's not it. So this is all the results. This is my results, right? Here's my random number. Come on, guys. Let's see if you can figure this out. I'm going to put this up on GitHub so you guys can help me out. All right. So say added, created, simple, random number generator. Okay. And I'm going to put this up here. And I want you, it's kind of in my face. I know what it is, but I want you guys to figure it out. Okay. What was that? So go up online. I just put up this thing up on lesson 9, up online here, and see if you guys can figure this out. So here it is. Up online under lesson 9, right? Inside scripts. Okay, I've got one core script that I'm using, which is app.js, and I've got my random range method, right? And I've got my starts where I initialize everything. Nice, nice, right? And I got my main, which does some stuff, right, with min and max, right? And then as soon as I change this, I choose my input for my min range, the whole thing blows up. The first thing, it worked, but when it started working, no problem. When I changed the max range, no problem, from 1 to whatever. But I want to do the min range, something smaller, right? Then the whole thing blows up. All right? Inner HTML I'm using because I'm changing. There is nothing in there. I could use text content instead. So let's see if you're right. So we're going to go down here, and what you're complaining about is don't use inner HTML, use text content. So if I was to do this, text content, right? That's what you're saying. And I'll undo this in a second if it doesn't work, which is not a problem. Is it going to change anything? Let's see. Oh, this one too. So going back, still works. Roll. It's not as bad, right? 46 to 6. It's wrong though. If I put back the 1, it's giving me 1 to 6. Why is it giving me 0, 1 to? What the heck is it appending? Look, it's appending like 0 on the front of it, right? Yeah. And what is this? This is minimum and this is maximum, right? If I go, what about if I go to 1 to 1? What does it do? In fact, let's just restart and just go move this to 1. So what does this do? It should just give me 1. If I go this to 2 or 8, it should give me 1 to 8, like a D8. If I go to 1 to 20, now I'm playing D&D, right? If I can get to 20, there we go. There's your D&D roll, right? 1 to 20, it's random. Okay. But once I move this one, then I get some wacky stuff going on, Why is that? Come on, guys. I need you guys to help me out. Riaz, you too. Take a look. I want you to troubleshoot. Don't just look at it. Try it. All right? Because I posted it. It's up online. Take a look. So things that we can know. So it doesn't matter if we use text content or inner HTML. Doesn't matter. Okay? There's no discernible difference. One thing to note is the number. We know that it has nothing to do with these event listeners. Okay? Has nothing to do with the event listeners. Why is that? Right? Because of this. Because the min and the max are being used here in this random range formula. One thing that we can also try is to print out on the log, console log. This is what I would. This is where I would go. I want to print out the min and the max. So I want to say min, right, as an example, and then $ min, right, and then max. Copy paste. This is where I would go with it. And then $max. Okay, so min and max. I want to understand what they're doing. And now when I modify this stuff, you can see that the min is 9, and it's supposed to. It's actually reporting what it's supposed to report. This is important to understand what I'm actually getting, right? The actual value, not the one that I'm seeing here inside on the screen, but actually the one that I'm getting in the log, the number 23. Okay, so I know that these numbers are correct. And the same thing goes here. If I go 30 to 23, it's whack. Shouldn't get a real result, right? But this should work. If I go back from, like, let's say something like a 10, to, I want to get a result from 10 to 20. Okay, my formula is wrong. I know that. But if I roll this number, then I get like some 1710. What the heck? Well, going back to my formula now, we know this is the problem, right? So I get a min in here, right? Here's my min parameter, and here's my max parameter. Here's my min parameter. Here's my max parameter. And I'm math flooring it, right? Which I reduce whatever it is, right? So I'm taking the random number between 0 and max as an example, between 0 and max, and then adding min to it, right? Okay, let's look at the arguments, and I want to know the type of. So if I go console.log type of, and then I'm going to put in the type of min, and then console.log type of, just to help you, max. All right, so those are the two things I want to look at. I want to look at the min and max types. Random number is the one I'm getting, and somehow I'm concatenating those two things, right? And if I go back and if I go roll numbers, right? Numbers, I'm getting numbers. Okay, what if I do this? And then go roll string. Oh man, what a dumb mistake that is. Are you seeing what I'm getting, right? So at the beginning I was getting numbers, but as soon as I mess with this one, this became a string, right? How about when I do this one? Now what do I get? String, string. That's no good, right? Okay. So this is the reason why, okay? Because if I look down here, when I do this stuff in here, right? I say min is equal to min range dot value, which I'm getting from the control. Whenever I get anything from controls, right? And I knew this when I looked at it, I was like, oh, okay, damn, I knew what I did wrong, right? Whenever I get anything from controls, automatically it becomes a string. It doesn't matter if it looks like a number, right? So I need to do a parse int or one of those kind of things, right? So if I do a parse, right, I want to parse int because that's what it is. And I can surround this min range dot value with a parse int, right, which will convert the number from a string to an integer. This is only going to fix one part of the problem, right? Yes?
So then it was converting the max with the max.
Oh, yeah, well, it's converting it, but we just didn't notice it because it didn't matter. Because, see, I'm talking, because JavaScript is funny that way, right? If one's a number and the other one's a string, who cares, right? But when it becomes one and the other, so these ones I don't care about. These console logs, I know what I'm getting. I just want to make sure that now inside of my function, which is way up here, I'm getting a number, not a string. All right, so I'm going to go back here and change this and press roll, and I'm getting numbers. Okay, now that's better. It's wrong, but it's better. Okay, because min can't be greater than max, right? And I didn't put labels in here like min, max, but you know, that's weird, right? But it's not wrong. This is a correct result. Why? Because I'm saying, hey, go a number between 0 and 6, but not including 6, which means 5, plus 20. Right? In this particular case, I rolled the maximum amount I could roll. Right? If I roll it again, that's the minimum amount I can roll. I just rolled the minimum. From 20 to 25 is what I did right now. So what I've done is actually it swapped these two things. And it didn't do it right. It said, okay, so when I put the number like this that's greater than this, it actually just made a number between 5 and 20, right? And if I did something like, I can't go negative, thank God, right? Because you can try and do that too, right? But if I was going to do something like between 20 and 30, this is not going to provide the right number anymore, right? 20 and 30 means 0 to 30, 0 to 30. And then what I'm going to do is plus, actually 0 to 29 plus 20. Yeah.
Just put if it's 1 to the 1 that don't add the rest.
I could.
Else,
I could. There's like, we're going to do some stuff right now. Yeah, to fix this problem, right? All right, so we don't care about this anymore. We know that we fixed the type problem because that was the first problem. The first bug we had was the type issue, right? And again, guys, whenever we have a problem with code like concatenating, in your mind, you have to think, wait, concatenation? Wait, that means it's strings. Oh, strings. That means I'm passing strings somehow. How am I passing strings? Oh, yeah. Anything I get from the input, if I'm getting something from a form or an input, it's going to be a string, no matter what happens, right? By the way, notice that my input is not inside of a form. I used a form control outside of the form because I can do that with JavaScript. All right, so here's my my random number. I get a math.floor, max, min, minus min. I need to do some operations before this. If, you know, as an example, max should subtract min, right? If I have a number between 1 and 6, right, I should take my maximum, which is 6, if you think about it. It's got to work for all cases, this thing I'm trying to do, right? And if I subtract 1, then it would be 5. That's my number range, right? Whatever that number range is, plus 1. I'm always going to add 1 to it, right? So I take the number max minus min plus 1, and that's what it should be. So that should be my new range, right? Max minus min should be here, plus 1 should be here. So this should be always plus 1, and max minus min should be here. So we'll say that. We'll say let max minus min, right, is equal to max minus min, right? So max minus min will be this one, max minus min. By the way, guys, I'm just fudging this thing to see if this works, right? And let's try for the base case, which is 1 to 6, right? So if I was going to do this 1 to 6 roll, then we get a 3, 1, 5. I want to get a 6. Come on, guys, give me a 6, give me a 6. And if I didn't do this right, then that's bad. No 6. Was that? Huh? Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a reason why I'm doing this. So max minus min. So let's figure this out. If I put 6 minus 1, it's 5. So 0 to 5 plus 1 is 1 to 5. Not really. Didn't really solve it, right? So I want to kind of max minus min plus 1 kind of thing, right? That's what I kind of want. But that kind of makes it weird too. Watch. Max minus min. I'm fudging it, guys, right? Plus 1, right? And if I was to do that, then we're going to get the result for 6, no problem, because this will give us the number we want, right? Just saying, right? But then when we go to 10, let's figure out this base case. So if I go to 10, 10 minus 1 is 9, plus 1, 10, right? So we have 10 numbers, and then plus whatever this min number is, right? Which is 0 to 10 plus 1, right? Okay, so let's try this out. So should go give me a 10. There's my 10s, right? Okay, now the minimum case. So I want to go from 8 to 10. 10 minus 8. Uh-oh.
10 minus 8. Will be 2.
This can't work, right? 10 minus 8 is 2, right? Plus 1 is 3, and then 1 to 3. Right? All right, we're close. We're very close. We're very close. We're going to make a generic case here, right? This is right, actually. But what we're adding, right, is 1, and what we should be adding is min, right? And if we did that, max minus min plus min, max minus min is like, what? How about this? Wait, let's try it. So roll. Where's my 6? Yay! Right? Okay, and if I do this, if I said that it's from 8, right, to 10, we haven't checked the other case, whereas like the minimum is bigger than the maximum. That would be bad. 8 to 10. So roll. Right? If I go from 5 to 50, so some number like 5, and I want to go 50, somewhere in the beginning, like somewhere up here. It's not quite 50, and it's hard to get that with that single up thing. It's hard, right? So there's 5 to 50. Okay, so we've got a decent range, right, of numbers. There's 50. And we got 50. We got 5 already. Yeah, so 5 and 50. All right, so that works. So this formula looks like it's okay. But what about in the case where min is greater than max? Right? What do we do then? Right? I could use an absolute sign because you're going to get a minus, right? So let's try this out. So what happens if I go the other way around? I go like something like this. So I said, well, I don't know, this is 20, and this will be 5. So I want to go from, so we'll make it 1 to 20, but the other way around, 20 and 1. What do I get now? So roll. How come it's working? What? And is it working okay? Does it give me a 1 to 20? Well, it gives me 20, a lot, higher numbers, but I never get lower than, like, I haven't seen a 1 yet. I haven't seen a 1 or a 20. So what would this give me if I did this? Let's check the math. So again, I'm getting 20 here and a 1 here. All right, so 20 goes in here, 20 minus, so sorry, 1 minus 20, right? So it's minus 19 plus 1, minus 18, and then I put minus 18 in here. Uh-oh. Oh, what? This is the thing that happens, guys. Minus 18, math.random, 0 to 1 times minus 18 plus some 0 or some minus, my negative, plus the minimum, which is 20, right? So I'm going to get some minus something. It's going to subtract something, but it's not going to be right, right? So I got to prevent it from happening. When min is less than max, there's 2 ways to do it. I can modify my function, or I can modify my input. What would you do? Think about it. What do I want to stop the user from doing? Going minimum is greater than maximum, right? That's what I want to stop. I don't want to do this. I don't want to fool. This function looks like it's going to be okay, right? It's this stuff that's happening on the HTML side that I want to change, right? This stuff. So I want to stop the range from happening. So on my input, which is going to be inside of my event handler down in here, I want to do something like this. I want to check. I want to do a check whenever the min range, I don't care about the max range check. All I care about the min range check, right? The min range check is what I got to say. If my min range dot value is greater than my max range dot value, I'm going to make it equal to my max range dot value. Okay? So I'm never going to allow it to go beyond it. Okay? And that's how I'm going to control it. I'm going to say that if min range dot value, right, is greater than max range dot value, right, then I'm going to say that min range dot value is equal to max range dot value. Okay, I haven't converted them yet.
Let me put it this way.
I haven't converted them yet.
If you bigger and put like a mini action, that's it.
No, because then it's going to confuse people. Yes.
If you use the max range value, get like the
That's what you're saying. Yeah. So you can say whatever. Yeah. So I can swap it basically right away. Yeah. No. Let's just do a min max for a second, right? So we'll stop it from happening. So I'll say, okay, so I want to go 6, and it allows me to do this, but guess what? It's going to be 6 to 6. I should get a 6 every time, right? Oh man, did I not save this thing? What happened? So okay, if min range dot value is greater than max range dot value, is this going to compute? What's min range dot value? This thing. Min range dot value, my friends, is a string. I'm trying to compare strings. Is this string greater than that string? How do I do that? So I got to do this part somehow before I do the comparison. So I got to do one of these, right? Parse int is this, and then I also got to parse the other one. I got to do this. I got to parse this one too, right? Immediately. In fact, I got to do that twice. So I always got to do this and this, just in case I need to do the operation twice, right? But I'm not going to change it here. This one definitely is going to be the way it is, right? Max is going to be max value, and I don't want to do min and thing. I want to do min and max. I want to say min. If min is greater than max, that's what I want. Min is greater than max, right? Then check that out, right? So I go like this, right? And I press thing, and it's 12. And I try again, and notice that it doesn't allow me to move it anymore. So this worked, right? The value worked, right? Huh? No. I mean, even if I put it to 100, it shows 100, right? But it doesn't. If I go here, it does that. It takes the value, but it doesn't move. The slider doesn't move, right? I'm almost there, right? So that's it. So min range, and now I got to say that the min is equal to max, right? Min and max are the things I'm passing, not min value and max value, right? Okay, so go here, and okay, that kind of didn't work, but now it's good. Now this allows me to do the change. It does the change, right? Because the min actually shows this part, whatever it is, right? So it's protected. I'm protecting the value. It goes from 6 to 6, right? If I go back to 1, it'll do the 1 to 6, right? No problem. And if I move this slider up, so if I move this to like 50, I'm almost there. I'm very close. I can do 1 to 50. And if I move this up all the way, it'll stop me where the other one is. It'll stop the slider, right? And then it'll also stop the value. I'm always going to get 50. And if I move this down, I'm going to get some other number between 30 and 50, right? But the input changes. The input's showing my change right away, right? So the text content is changing here, right? But I don't want it to until I do my check, right? That's what I want it to do. So min and max, min range is equal to max value. And then I want to do this. Instead of here, I want to do it down here, but be careful because of what this is, right? I want to kind of do it down here, right? Because I want to do it regardless of if it's greater than or whatever. And let's check this out. So boom, boom, that's 6, right? So it won't allow me to go higher than that. That's the check. I've safeguarded my thing. Roll now will be 1 to 6. If I go to here, I can go to 55, and I can't go higher than 55. See, it'll just limit me. It won't stop me from going to 55. Are you guys good? That will limit me, okay? One more thing I want to add in to finish off my roller. I want to put the name, min and max. Min value, max value. So that's on the index.html side, where I want to put a label. And to get an example of the label, I'm going to go to Bootstrap because they have a label. It looks like this, right? Yeah, okay. I could have got this from anywhere. Min range value, right? And this will be min range We're almost done, guys, for today. And max range value. Okay. And you can see that's 1 to 6 set up by beginning. I can go to 3 to 6. No problem. I can get rid of this, the generated result. I fixed it, so I don't need to do any kind of more troubleshooting, which I highly recommend. You fix up your console logs when you're done. And I want to tell you a little bit. I'm just going to comment this out. I want to tell you a little bit about why I did this one today. All right, and I went crazy with the stuff. There's 2 reasons. One thing, I never covered getting input from your form, right? Which is something of a problem sometimes. We need to remember, always remember parsing the data that's coming in inbound from the form, because everything you get from your form is a string. Everything, whatever, even if it looks like a number. Right, number 1.
Same in C#, right?
Same in C#, same in every language, right? Same thing with Swift if you're using iOS. Same thing with Android if you're doing, or Java with Android. Whatever you're doing, anything that you get from an input always is a string. That's number 1. We never did that. And the other thing is, we didn't do a more complex example with 3 different event handlers, right, like this, that are happening in asynchronously, all right? Notice that I'm using min and max. This is the lesson 2, but I'm kind of updating the min and max down here, but I'm doing the random range up here, right? And it doesn't matter because these 3 event handlers are happening in their own time, right? Their own thread, if you will, okay? Because I'm creating 3 events, and these events are happening on their own at any time. Anytime I click any of those buttons, these events are being generated, right? That's another thing. And we never really covered, more complex things like sliders. I was going to use other things. We could have made buttons. We could have created buttons that go up and down, right? Little buttons, pluses and minuses, whatever. I think the slider is a good solution. It is a little annoying. The other thing we could have added in here is the step. If I wanted to add another control for the step, that I can add the slider step. So I can say, well, the step is 5. So it goes up by 5s, right? Or the step is whatever, and then I can choose the step from one to the other. But this gives me a good random range, as an example. If I want to go a number between 30 and 45, and if I roll, I'm going to get a random number that's going to cover that range, whatever that range is. Yeah.
Just drop down no, minimum should be the 45. Drop.
Oh, this. Yeah, that's oh, I didn't think of that. Yeah, that's another one. That'll break. That'll break. Yeah, that'll break. So that's another thing. So once the maximum range, if the maximum range is less than the minimum range, we got to do that check. Okay, guys, hold on. Don't go away. We're going to fix this. Thank you for that. That's good troubleshooting. So again, what about if it's the other way around? What if max is less than min? We do this part. So we'll do the same thing. Let's move this around because this will be down here. And we'll do if this part right here is down over here. And we do need min and max again, because just like I thought, because we have to parse them, and we'll say if max is less than, that's the other case, less than min, then we want max to be equal to min. We never want max to drop below min or min to go above max, right? So max range value is equal to min range value, and max is equal to min. That's the only case that it happens. That's the opposite way of doing things. Okay. So solve it now. So it does this part, no problem, and it does this part, no problem. So it doesn't do that way. So if I go from here to this, if I go up this way, I can go up to 48, but then I can't go below 48 because 48 is the min, right? But what does it generate? That's what it should be, 48 to 48, right? And if I go down to 26, then I should go 26 to 48, no problem. But then I shouldn't be able to go below 26. Testing, okay? Thank you. Very good call. Very good catch. Questions around this today? Very simple example, but you're going to need to do something like this for your final test. hint, hint, right? But you're going to use a more graphical interface that I'm going to get you to do, right? So, because we really haven't talked graphics too much, but this is really key in terms of min and max range. I'm going to put this up on GitHub so you have a copy of it for later reference. I'm going to say updated, random range. Okay, that's what I did. Those both in. Sure. And click that and push. There we go. Any questions for today? Guys, yes.
All the
I'm going to get that in. I'm going to try and get that into you by next week, worst case. All right. Do you think you did bad? All right. I don't think you did bad either. But anyways, don't worry about it, is what I'm saying. If you handed it in, guys, I'm not a hard marker. All right. That's the most important thing. Any other questions? Okay, guys, thank you so much. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to do more of this stuff with more other things we're going to handle, more than just the random range stuff. So stay tuned.